is. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, as folks start popping in, but give them a little insight into Adriana and Collin's world for the last couple of weeks. I just shared with you, I'm coming off of a birthday. Wasn't a milestone birthday. I know in your world, you're going to be celebrating a milestone birthday for someone very special.
Yeah.
Although mine wasn't a milestone birthday, I do want to shout out my daughter because I was gifted, with something very amazing. I was traveling with my daughter and family out to Louisville, Kentucky. She is a competitive basketball player, and we were out there to support her and her team. And they swept their bracket, and my
Okay.
girl and her girls became national champions. And my daughter
That's what's up.
dedicated that national championship win to mommy, for mommy's birthday. So definitely on a high there. But that travel and that AAU and girls basketball and gyms for a week did a number on your girl, Colin.
Let me tell you something. I uniquely know about it. Long, 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 long time ago, I used to be traveling. I used to do a lot of the AAU stuff too, and my parents used to go, especially my dad. And that's a commitment and a half because at least with me, I'm out there playing, and you kind of have that to look forward to. And I know watching is great. But it's like you're doing all the logistics. You're making sure they get there. Hey, make sure you eat something in between, and go to sleep because you're still young and trying to have fun, like act like you ain't there to play ball. So, kudos to you because I know it's work. It's real work, even though it's pleasure because it's to see your daughter shine really bright and really a lot of props to her because it ain't easy to win. And those everyone's going hard. It's the best players from every state, and it's definitely hard work, it's mental, commitment, and it's outstanding that she was able to get there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And just kind of to align it with the conversations that we have on keeping it 100, what I really enjoyed about that conference and other basketball conferences I attend is I'm seeing these young women of color just getting it, right? And sometimes we all know, and although I wasn't an athlete growing up, sometimes as a young lady of color, you don't have the opportunity to shine or to showcase your talent in a way that
Yeah.
it deserves. And so just watching the recruiters just
Yeah.
eat it up, watching these young ladies get scrappy and get down and just doing stuff that I'm like, how in the world did that happen? And so, that teamwork, that camaraderie,
Yeah.
that grit, that growth mindset of just like, I'm here, and I'm here to bring it home and get it done. I just find that that's an amazing space and an opportunity to catapult these young women and provide them the spotlight that they're deserving of to showcase the talent that they have. So just huge
Yeah.
shout out to all athletes, but a particular shout out to my young ladies out there who are showing up and showing out in this
No,
space.
I can't say enough about team sports and what it taught me and what I learned from it, the resilience that you need, the commitment to excellence that you need. You know what I mean? And it's sometimes you don't realize it until you're caught up in a situation and you look back like I remember when I had to run 17s with the team and you look around and you're like, it's just us. It's just us. This man's trying to kill us, but he's gonna have to kill all 12 of us, right? And so it's a great experience, and I'm happy that she's enjoying that and shining at the best. So she'll be ready for career better than most because of those moments.
For sure. Well, you definitely know I will be showing her reruns of the Keeping It 100 career conversations when she gets ready to step into that space, And again, much love to everyone joining us. Raquel Flores, I see you, girl.
Yeah.
Always showing up. Thank you. Rodney, what's going on? Ana Ike, what's going on, folks? So, Colin and I are getting into another meaty conversation today. We're going to talk about the fear of failure, or in some instances, is it really fear of success? So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to get into today, folks. So stay tuned, hold on, because we're going to get this party started. Let's go. Hey friends, welcome to Keeping It 100 Career Conversations. Now you already know, not all career conversations are created equal. If you're a flavorful professional looking to decode that workplace and accelerate your career roadmap, let's go ahead and let's get right into it with your hosts, Adriana Dawson and Collin Bailey. What's going on? Every time I see that picture, Collin, of me, like that headshot, I gotta call it out. I'm feeling like I'm catfishing folks because so everybody, excuse me, your girl will probably be refreshing that headshot in the next couple months. That is a pre-COVID pic, and I was feeling myself in that picture, and I've been leveraging every ounce out of that picture, but sorry, I just had to go random for a second because every time that comes up, I'm like, man.
Hey, so when you just said that, I was thinking, man, we at that age, we still remember Mi Gente, Black Planet, and MySpace. Hey, listen, shout out to Mi Gente, Black Planet, and MySpace, with the catfishing and just learning about networking.
Oh, no, thank you for that. So, folks, you're here. We're getting ready to get this party started. It's Friday drive time for some of you. I'm joined by my amazing Collin, my amazing colleague, Collin here, and we're gonna get into it. So, Collin, why don't you get us started? Because I think if I recall, you were the one who kind of suggested, based on all the amazing suggestions we've been getting over the course of our sessions, like, hey, Adriana, why don't we land on this? So why don't you kick us off? But before we do, folks, share this goodness, show some love in the chat. If there's something that's resonated with you, we want to make sure that you let us know if there's something that you're connecting with. And again, no gatekeeping here, folks. So make sure you share the link with your network so that they can join you on Keeping It 100 today with Adriana and Collin. So Collin, let's take it away.
Right. Yeah. So I think there's like three components. So fear of failure. I think you've added in this the real thought provoking of, are you really fearing success? And then there's a third element of, let's call it the practical of, well, if you're not going to be fearful of failure, what do you do with the time, right, in between these like decision moments or these opportunity kind of milestones? And that's the whole relentlessly preparing for success element. So I'm always going to start with a disclaimer. Maybe that's the legal element, right? And that is, this is not a magic pill, right? We're not getting magic pellets, no Jack and the Beanstalk. You listen to this and all of a sudden success just happens, right? Fear is real. Fear is legitimate. It's necessary. Our brains needed to understand that we can't just go and do whatever we want and just be reckless, right? So this is not about being reckless at all. This is about managing and mastering something that is always going to be present. Sometimes really present, sometimes it's just there under the surface and you're not really, as worried about it, but fear is always going to be around. And, it's about the process of, one, getting comfortable controlling it and preparing for success instead of preparing for failure or always letting failure control your actions. But even mastering this process, none of that means that you're just going to be successful, right? So that's a disclaimer. If we had that in a bottle, we would 100% just be billionaires, and we still show y'all love, but it would be a different type of love. That'd be like, I don't know, just a random floating cat floating over my head, like a fat cat from or something. It'll just be random richness, like stupid things going on. So let's talk about fear of failure, right? So we all experience fear. And you either learn how to overcome fear, or fear is going to stop or limit you. And this is especially true in your professional career because, growing up, I might have had a fear of dogs. But as I get older, now I have two dogs, and I understand kind of the mentality of how you need to behave around a dog or train a dog, etc. But when it comes to your career, a lot of times the fear is coming from all over places from your life, but you're dealing with folks who you're not close with. So you don't have that comfort of being like, well, this happened to me when I was a child, and that's why when I was talking about this issue, I was triggered and I didn't perform. you know? So it's career is
Mhm.
extremely vulnerable, even though you think of it as a formal thing that has nothing to do with emotions, right? So in the chat, definitely people let me know what are some of the root causes of fear that you can think of or you felt you've experienced. When I think about it, it's insecurities. It could be insecurities about your looks. It could be insecurities about your voice, right? How you sound. It could be lack of preparation. Hey, they asked me to put this together and I only had 2 days, and this is something that would take 2 months. Lack of certainty. So there's no situation where you bring a product to market where you know every element of every possible thing that could happen, but you still have to make a decision at some point to bring it to market, right? But that fear will make you delay bringing it to market instead of going and learning. Failing quick, failing cheap. A lot of times I've heard CEOs say imposter syndrome. I don't belong here. I'm not worthy of being here. And opposition, real or imagined. So going to the young folks with the ops, right? You really have haters who are trying to undermine you and not allow you to succeed. And and sometimes
And it's not just for the young folks, all right? That's not just young folks. Some of us have fan
yeah, yeah,
clubs,
I
so
get
no,
it.
I get
And then
it.
family and friends could be, and in a good and bad way, right? There's that burden of success or that burden of if I don't do this, I'm gonna have to answer these questions, etc. And then traumas. And this is real, like traumas again. There's past failures that caused the trauma. You were at the foul line to win the game. You had to hit that one free throw and you missed both. And now you're sitting here and you're like, I can't do this. Right. And then
Right,
childhood trauma, right? Like there's just the real deep things that, I'm
right.
not a psychologist. I can't diagnose it or solve it here, but these are real. I'm sorry. So what I'm saying is these are all legitimate. I'm validating you. But at the end of the day, we still have this one life to live and we have to figure out a way of going and getting past that fear and moving forward so that we're prepared for success. And so, Adriana, I want you to talk about your piece of it, which is the fear of success, because I resonated with it when you explained it to me.
You ready for that? Because I got stories for days. So, and this is where, again, Colin and I were having this great back and forth, and it just brought me back to our origin story about keeping it 100 and why we decided to launch this platform is because we were just having these aha moments where he was sharing his perspective and I was like, yeah, that's right. And then I'd hit him with like, but dude, this is what happened to me and let me share with you. So now we're bringing it to light because I think I'm at a stage in my life and at a point in my career where I can give voice to it. Early on in my career, it would just sit with me. It would sit on my heart. It would stay in my head. It would paralyze me. It would prevent me from action. And I would just sit with that heaviness and sit with that doubt. And that negative juju and that energy would manifest itself in really bizarre ways unintentionally because I didn't have someone to talk to, and I didn't have thought partners or my personal board of directors to help shake it off. And what that looked like for me, I don't know that I would necessarily claim that it was the fear of failure for me. For me, what it looked like was more the fear of success. Um, and what that meant for me and what that looked like across my sort of my career, and I think I've shared with those of you who have joined several episodes, but for those of you who are new, again, I'm a first generation professional. Both my parents were factory workers, um, come from very modest, very humble beginnings, and so I am anchored just by nature and how I grew up in a scarcity mindset. And I own that. I come from a place of as a kid asking for things and always being told, no, we can't afford it. No, not yet. No, not right now. And that prepared me and that brought me into my current adult stage. Well, I'm not going to ask for it because I can't afford it, or I wouldn't know how to handle it, or there's no more of that. So the fear of success for me was I'm very comfortable with where I am. I'm not going to ask for more because I might get told no. So I don't want to be told no. So I'm good here, and I'm going to excel where I am, so that I don't want to be vulnerable, and I don't want to the fear of rejection for me was I don't like being told no. And so I prevented myself from being accepting of new opportunities, because what I leaned into was, I know I'm worthy. I know I can do it, but what if I let them down? What if I don't deliver what they're looking for from me? What if I can't handle it? What if I don't rise to the occasion? But it wasn't them, it was me. It was self imposed. I was still anchored in these very limiting beliefs, again, because of some of the trauma and some of the lived experience as a young girl, the little Adriana stuff that I hadn't dealt with made its way to the adult version of Adriana, but I can give voice to it now, and I can recognize it for what it is and share with all of you, what some of those strategies on how I arrived at my aha moment, and how I perfected my bounce
Yeah,
back,
yeah.
and I went from the why me to the try me
Yep,
mentality.
yep. So I definitely want to chime in on this, but just some quick shout outs. Thank you, Brian, for your comment. Jem, Rosa. I feel like I just want to say Elvira, because that's what I always called you in law school. But Rosa, Elvira, my beautiful wife Angie,
Angie, what's
Jeff
going on?
Jeff Lackey, he's sitting out there putting some deep comments in here. I see you, Anna. So we always want to give shout outs to folks who are taking the time and putting in thoughtful things that help us. So I also want folks to chat, what do you fear from a success standpoint? So we put in just, what do you fear about failing? But and this is real. So if your dreams and your aspirations don't scare you, right? They're not big enough, right? Everyone's heard
Right.
that statement. So what do you fear succeeding right now, right? So for me, growing up, I always, let's say, had this natural ability. I played sports, I was smart, but I also was like, I don't want to put in the work, right? And so when I did do something, I was all in. I end up being the type of person who, I couldn't just sit there and listen to it not going well. I'd have to be like, no, we're not doing this right. It needs to be X, Y, and Z. So because I knew, I was
Mhm.
like, man, I ain't trying to go hard on everything, I would just not raise my hand. And I realized how much that impeded me, right? I had the ability to do so much more. And really, honestly, I finished law school, all that stuff. And not until the birth of my daughter, Lena, did I get that unrelenting motivation to be like, and I remember sitting there talking to
Mhm.
God, like, I need to provide, I need to do these things. And I said, if you give me the opportunity, it will just be a blessing to work hard, right? Instead of my mentality before, which was hard
Right.
work, I'm trying to avoid that as much as I can if it's not something I love, right? So now it became, hard work is a blessing, period, because there's so many people who don't even have the physical ability to work hard. And so ran from success many times because I knew I could do that well. I just didn't want to put in the work to do well. The other thing is,
Mhm.
sometimes as I think of myself as a chess player, I try to look 3, 4 steps down, right? So you'll look at an opportunity and be
Mhm.
like, I can kill that, but then they're going to want me to do this, they want me to do that, and I'll be traveling all over the country. I never get to see my family. So now you start spiraling into success that,
Right.
man, just take the steps, prepare yourself, and when those issues occur, you will do the best you can based on your preparation. But sometimes you're canceling yourself because you're taking yourself 4 or 5 steps down the road, and honestly,
Right.
it stops you from going there.
It's paralyzing. It's absolutely paralyzing. And I guess the other thing I'd love to add, and folks chime in, and I'm loving all the comments. So the other element for me was I had to recognize that I am a people person, but that doesn't mean that I have to be a people
Yeah.
pleaser, right? And again, early on in my career, because I am an extreme extrovert, like I just draw energy from others. I love being around folks. Not that I need everybody to like me, but early on, that was sort of my frame, right? Um, it made me feel good when I knew I made others feel good, or that others felt proud of me. I was looking for some type of affirmation or validation, again, early on in my career. And it wasn't until, I guess, to echo what you said, the birth of my daughter and sort of that milestone in my life where now I had another little
Yeah.
human being, that I would imagine modeling my behavior and modeling how I move through the world. Like I wanted her to just um, advocate for herself and step into certain spaces with a certain bravado. Like I got this, and I'm like, well, I want that for her. Why am I not doing it for myself? Right? And it wasn't until I started feeling really comfortable with this idea of I can be a people person, but I can also recognize I'm not going to be everybody's
No.
cup of tea. Not everybody's always going to like my energy. I know that I bring a lot of energy and I have a strong personality, and that might turn some people off. But you know what? I'm okay with that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
like I move how I move with integrity, I move thinking about humanity and my impact and my footprint on people's hearts and in this world. And I do it for all the right reasons. And if for some reason that rubs someone the wrong way, I'm not going to change my why or my who because someone's given me the side eye. And that was also a game changer for me where it aligned with diminishing my fear because part of my fear was, are people going
Yeah.
to accept
Yeah.
me? Right? How am I going to move into this space where I'm the only or I am the representative of this particular community group? And it wasn't until I felt very comfortable and walking in there with pride and confidence and accepting and embracing my talents that I was like, it's all right. I got this. We're going to do this together. That things started to really move in the right
Yeah.
direction for me.
So one, this is a deep topic. I can see it in the comments. I am really feeling it. Everyone is they're digging into the soul, and we appreciate you for that. And I appreciate you, Adriana. And I think something you just said um, is really important. So, I remember being in a what you would call a heated email debate about something with a stakeholder, and they kind of made a mention of, oh, your email is coming off patronizing or belittling, and
Mm,
listen, what I was stating was facts, right? And the reality is, you cannot be responsible for how someone receives what you're putting out
right,
there, right? What you can be responsible for is your motivation and your intent, right? So are you being
yep,
gratuitous and mean spirited, or are you saying, no, this is literally the answer, this is how I go about responding to things, and you're the first person who's ever come at me and said that I was being this way, right? The bottom line is we have to love ourselves and own who we are, be authentic, because if we're worried about pleasing everyone else, again, that's a fear, right? I am fearful that I
right,
won't please this person. So the minute they show a little bit of a mannerism of like discontent, or they say something that makes it seem like they don't agree with my idea, this idea that I know more than them, no one else is as prepared as me in this meeting, I'm going to invalidate myself. Well, I might have some more work to do on it. Well, this. No, no, no. I'm confident that this is the best work available. This is what we can do. This is how we'll achieve. We should move forward. If they say they don't want to move forward, that doesn't diminish the quality of your work or the quality of
right.
your idea. But again, you cannot be responsible for how someone receives what you put out. That's why we talk about the bat signal. Look for people who are responding to your bat signal to save the day.
No, absolutely. I appreciate that, Colin. And we got Jem throwing some gems here. So let's see. So I wonder if I become successful. What is my new work? I know. I mean, again, those are all legit. Those are all things that'll keep us up at night. Do you have the energy? Do you have the bandwidth? you know um as we talk about sort of the intersectionality, like when I hear people talk about work life balance, I don't know that I would use the word balance. I would use
Yep.
harmony. I'm looking for harmony, and in many instances my professional life and my personal life are very
Yeah.
blended. They're very, very intertwined. I cannot separate the two sometimes. And there are things that keep me up at night in terms of, okay, so tomorrow my work might be impacted because my daughter's got basketball tournaments and I got to travel with her. But guess what? Later on in the week, uh, my family might have to take a hit because I have a gala or I have events, but it's that mindfulness around that. But again, to Colin's point earlier, if you're not sort of preparing yourself for what does this look like, as I step into these new spaces and I lean into opportunities while I kind of push my fear to the side a little bit, it's also the anticipation of how you need to make adjustments within your life and adjustments to your time management because time is such a valuable currency. Time is so important. And Colin and I have often talked about is um, make sure that you're really smart and strategic about where you're making those time deposits and those time investments. Where you're going to spend an hour of your time, what is that return on the investment going to look like? Is it meaningful? Is it substantive? Or is there another space where you should be redirecting that time or that energy? Again, it's when you stop leaning into that fear that you're going to have more clarity as to your next steps, as Colin says about your career, GPS. But your clarity is clouded by fear.
Yeah,
You know, it's
and I think
paralyzing.
that's a great segue into like the relentless preparation for success piece of it, right? So one, I've been listening to a few master classes because I just see some leaders that I admire from afar, and hearing their philosophy on just life and work and all that good stuff. It's been great. So Rosalind Brewer talks about how, hey, it's big CEO of a huge company, and it's like you have all the responsibility in the world, plus being one of the few women as well as African American women as a CEO. I'm sure there's a lot of like just demands on, hey, can you join this board? Can you come speak at this? Can you come talk to folks about how you achieve this success? And her point is, look, from a company standpoint, I focus on the top 2 to 3 game changing like things that the company is doing. That's what
Mm-hmm.
I'm meeting on those things regularly. I'm making sure they're pushing forward. And then for the other things, like this is not even like day to day where the revenue is being generated every day. She's saying, I'm going to delegate those to my team, my leadership team, and they need
Right.
to manage it. And yes, I'll get updates, but that's not my relentless focus. My relentless focus is those game changing 2 to 3 initiatives that we identified. And that's what I'm going to be focused on. So what that means is as you go up, right, in leadership hierarchy, you have to now start to filter out the things that they're important, because day-to-day revenue, you need to make revenue every day, right?
That's
However,
right.
that's working. You just need to make sure you have the right steward to keep it going. But the things that will change, the innovation, the modernization, whatever transformation you're trying to drive, those are the things that require you as that leader of that area to say, I got to focus on this, and my leadership team below me needs to make sure that the things that have been working continue to work. So as I think about preparing for success, I think there's 2 things that are like fundamental, and they're hard. So I'm not even sitting here like it's not hard. It's hard. One is practical optimism, right? You got to have a mindset of practical optimism. So you can't be Eeyore walking around with the rain clouds over your head everywhere you go, right? No
Nobody
Eeyore is
wants that.
allowed, right? So it's like, I think
No.
I'm going to succeed. I believe that what is going to happen will work out. And I think that, in some of Jeff's comments, he was quoting the scripture. And there is an element of spirituality and definitely, just belief and faithfulness where it will work out. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't always work out exactly how you wanted the book to end, but it will work out to the positive, especially if your mentality is optimism. The other part of it is, and this is something that can definitely be learned, is professional resilience. You got to have reserves and endless reserves of professional resilience. You have a bad day, find that thing that brings you joy to combat it so you can recharge and come back, you know? If you don't have that professional
Absolutely.
resilience, you will get knocked down, knocked down, knocked down, knocked down, and you'll realize that I'm now acting out of character. I'm acting out of pocket. I'm being mean to people. I'm being short with people. I'm
Mhm.
frustrated. I'm not. Even when I'm home, I'm not present because I'm thinking about how I'm doing all these things that I know are not me, but I keep doing them. Right. So that professional resilience is so much about how do I go back to who I am? How do I go back to what I want to manifest? And then that practical optimism talks to, yes, I got to put in the work. Yes, I have to be prepared. But at the end of the day, when I do that, things will work themselves out to the better.
I love that. And I'm gonna add, I'm gonna sprinkle in to your point. I think what I've also learned later on in life is how to regulate my
Mm,
emotions. So to your point, right? Because I think that's a skill. Because I used to be quick and ready. It was on and popping sometimes, give folks a side eye, or I was like ready to get slick. And again, I mean, that all comes with the lived experience and how I grew up. But again, as you continue to develop as a professional and your level of emotional intelligence, starts to rise and you recognize how you are stepping into spaces and how folks are responding to your energy, what I've also learned is how to regulate, self-regulate those emotions so that you're able to
yeah.
process and filter. I've developed a really, really good filter, but that self-regulation has been just one of the areas that I've leaned into over the course of the last couple of years that I didn't have before because I didn't know it
Yeah.
was a thing. I didn't know what to call it. I just knew things weren't sitting well with me depending on different interactions or conversations that I would have, and then I just didn't take the time to
Yeah.
pause and to reset. And once I started to really commit to building my
Mm,
personal brand, what do people think about me, after their interaction with me? What impression am I making on folks? As I started to create more space and think about what what impression is that having and how is that supporting my career
yep.
GPS? I'm like, oh, wait a minute. There are a couple of things I need to tighten up, a couple of things I could work on. And that was definitely one of them. So thank you for pointing out those critical
Yeah, no, and,
areas.
and I see Aliana saying self-regulation is so important, even if others are not self-regulating themselves. And listen,
That's my girl, Aliana. What's going on, girl?
and that's
Uh,
real. I talk to my mom a lot. Just like I'll be driving. So I used to drive from New Jersey to Rhode Island or Rhode Island to New York, and I'd be talking to her, and we talk a lot about kind of the mentality of, well, if they didn't say hi to me or this person they were wrong and they haven't acknowledged it, so I'm not going back. And I kind of just came to this epiphany one day. I said, well, mom, what is it that you want? Right? Because you can't control that person.
mm,
But if you want that person in your life, if you want that
right.
opportunity, you can control how you treat that person, no matter how they behave. Right? And this is not about
Exactly.
letting someone trample you, bully you, or abuse you. This is about saying, what happened might not be that important. It might just be a petty thing, but it's keeping distance between us. So, how do we then say,
Right.
well, I know I need you in my life. I know I need you as an ally or as an advocate. So, I'm going to push past
Right.
this thing, this artificial, petty, not that important thing, and make sure that I'm showing up in a professional, caring, empathetic way. And hopefully, the shadow I cast becomes infectious. But regardless, I'm not going to let you infect me with the negativity and that fear of failure, right?
Right. No, no recklessness here. And Dr. Dixon, thanks so much. The calm and the chaos. I see you, Dr. Dixon. So I want to illustrate something that also happened in my household where I stepped in as a career coach to my husband, and I hope he's not watching this episode.
Uh-oh.
So just yeah, so with the hubby, we've been talking about, all of this, and we've been talking about sort of the navigation and um, his work isn't as externally facing as mine, right? And sometimes he hears conversations that I have, and he has overheard me interject and kind of reset or refresh the conversation with someone if I disagree with them. And in his mind, because he tends to be non-confrontational, anytime that I potentially have disagree professionally with someone, he has witnessed me
Mm,
pivot. But I don't have to be confrontational. It doesn't have to come off rude or disrespectful. It's, well, I respect your opinion. Let me
yep.
offer you mine. Right. So that was, again, I don't think I would have felt as comfortable engaging in those uh, professional pivots maybe 10 years ago because I feared the individual feeling a certain type of way about me, or I didn't have the level of confidence to kind of step back into that conversation, to offer some polite pushback, or here's another way to think about it. And so when my husband and I got into this conversation, and he's like, wow, you really did that. I said, yeah, but how did you
Yep.
feel about
Yeah.
that? Like, did you kind of close your eyes
Yeah.
and hold your breath because you thought wifey was going to be without a job? He's like, no, you actually did that really well. I said, yeah, honey, because in your minds, disagreeing with someone professionally doesn't have to be confrontational. It's, you've got to have the confidence and the facts behind what you're sharing, right? And it's the art of conversation and the art of doing what we do, but that comes with not having this fear and feeling very comfortable with the person that you're engaging with, that they are going to receive it well and it's going to have a soft landing, and that there's enough mutual respect that that can happen. But again, that wouldn't have been me, 10 to 15 years ago. I may have not even said anything, let it go, wrapped up the call, and then been like, can you believe what this person said to me? I don't hold that anymore. I
Yeah.
don't.
I had a gentleman who worked for me, and brilliant, really smart, very good and sharp and quick with responses, right? But the problem was just would get hot. And the hotness usually the hotness would generate from disagreement, like someone just not seeing it his way, or looking at it.
Yeah.
And what would happen is he'd be in these different meetings, and when he started getting hot, he would start going in, and his mannerisms were really snarky and just like, trying to make
Yep.
you feel foolish. And I used to say, hey, so let me just explain something. Because, look, growing up, I understand that. I probably used to do that a lot as a younger guy, getting in trouble in middle school, a little bit of high school, started chilling out in college, right? So I understood where he was coming from. But I said, look, you think you won the conversation in the way of, you made yourself feel
Mm,
good about showing them how foolish that point was, but you lost the battle in your career because now that leader dislikes you, right? And
yeah.
so over time, I just kept
100.
pounding that idea, and over time, he kind of moved away from it and realized that, like you said, regulating emotion. All right, one of the key things is who owns the decision. So if you own the decision and you've made your point as to why you want to go this way, and the other person doesn't own the decision but doesn't agree, and they're really like, no, I don't see it, I just don't get it, look, I get it, we've talked about this, I respect your views, I think there's some
Right.
validity to it, I think that my approach to it is what I think is going to be the best approach, and at the end of the day, it's my decision to make. I'm going to move forward with it. But let me tell you something, the next time I have an
Right.
important decision, I need you at the table. I need your views. I need your insight. I need you to push me so that we get to the best place. If they own the decision, it's the same. If they're not like mature enough to kind of get to that, hey, I'm just going to make this decision, they're feeling, it's like, listen, we talked about it. I've stated why I believe this is the best course, but ultimately you're the
Right.
decision maker. And so I've
Ultimately,
done
you
my
find out.
job
Yep.
as to
Absolutely.
advise you, as to give you the best of me in what I think should be done. And you're going to move forward and you're going to own that decision. And I just hope that I'm invited again to provide my advice and my insights the next time something that's important and strategic has to be decided. You always have to look to the future, right? Like, you're like, this one conversation isn't the end. So advocate, state why you believe it's right, but also be
Mhm.
a part of the solution no matter what the decision is, right? And that's one of
Absolutely.
the key things that I have seen folks who they're smart, but they get really just wedded to their view and don't get that, hey, decision was made. It's not what you wanted. Now you still have to make it successful as much as possible.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
No, yeah,
So one other
absolutely.
thing,
No,
yeah,
I
go ahead.
appreciate it. No, I was just gonna say another shout out to the folks in the comments. Rocky did the whoa, who owns the decision? Of course, you can always rely on Collin for those mic drops, folks. So,
No, yeah,
you
no.
know,
I mean, so one of the things I always like to do is like take it to the practical, right? So right now, a lot of folks are dealing with, I'm moving to a new job, I'm moving to a new career, or companies that are succeeding are hiring, companies who are not as much succeeding are letting folks go. And so I'll bring it to something
mm,
like that. So, okay, you're looking for your next opportunity. The fear of failure is going to say, but I'm not going to find something as good. I may not be as good at that
yep.
company as I've done here because they know me and they respect me. I have to prove myself again. So you're coming up with all the reasons why you're not going to succeed in getting the next thing, and it's going to be just as good or better than what you have right now. Well, if you just change that mindset and say, well, what do I need to do? I need to make sure I put together the best resume and cover letter I can. I need to make sure that I'm letting my network, I'm activating my network and saying, I am ready for more, I'm ready for new. Just put the word out, put the
Mhm.
beacon, put that back signal out, and let your network know you're ready to go save another city. You leave in Gotham, and you're going to Metropolis now, right? And then you just do all of the practical steps so that when that recruiter calls you and says, "Hey, this job is here.
Mhm.
It's ready for someone like you. What do you think?" Now you're ready with your pitch. You have it down because you've thought and visualized, you've prepared. You've had numerous conversations about your skill set with your network, with recruiters, etc. This is just now commonplace, right? And that's the whole
Right.
preparation for success. It isn't magic. It is, how do I prepare with all of the things I can control so that when the thing that I can't control meets what I can, you can make that impact and you can knock it out the ballpark.
No, agreed. I guess so. An additional perspective that I'm going to throw out there, because I have been having a conversation about this grit and growth mindset with different colleagues across different industries. And so, while I certainly believe that positive intention and that positive mindset will help us sort of achieve and get into a state of moving from intent to action. I think some elements that are not recognized when we simply say to folks, you got to think positive. You have to get into this growth mindset, is that positive thinking doesn't take into account systemic racism. It doesn't take into account unintended barriers. It doesn't take into account those of us that are first generation professionals that are attempting to decode the workplace, right? And just as you mentioned, while we have to plan for success, if you would have said that to me 15, 20 years ago, I would have been like, where do I even
Yeah.
start? Right. So I think I just want to create a very intentional pause to recognize the fact that while I think a lot of us are very well intended and we're saying the right things, we also have to cast a much wider net to make sure that we're being as inclusive as possible for those folks that are still on the fringes, who, for different reasons, life experience, trauma, or they've never experienced wins. Like that in and of itself is a trauma when you come from such a place of
Yeah.
scarcity that when you start to taste victory and success, you don't know what to do with it because you've never experienced it. Right. And so I think it's important to honor that because a lot of us come from that space. So sometimes I challenge the grit and growth mindset from a DEI perspective, because we have to take into account, and the conversation also needs to weave all those different nuances that keeping it 100 does. That professional and flavorful professionals often have to deal with. And so just wanted to offer
Yeah.
that humbly as an additive perspective. Many of us are stuck and they're hearing all the right things, but in their mind, it's just sort of on that hamster wheel where I don't even know what
Yeah.
that means. I don't even know what to do, and I can't even lift my thinking. So I guess what I would say to kind of close that out for me is folks have to put in
Yeah.
work. I had to work
Yep.
on myself. I didn't know what that meant until I started to surround myself with people who I wanted to emulate, where they had an essence about themselves. They had graceful leadership. They treated people with dignity and respect. So I was looking for all of these traits and I found them in different people as I started to build my, my network and my social capital. But then I would also reflect and ask myself, how do I do that? I'm not ready. I'm not there yet. I am still feeling self-doubt. There's a little cloud over my head sometimes. And so that got me into the place of I got to do
Yeah.
some work. I got to make some daily deposits because I got to figure out what's going on here, which is causing me to self sabotage in some instances or paralyze myself unintentionally. So I'm becoming my own worst enemy without even recognizing it. But it wasn't until then that I was able to break into the positive manifestation and the grit and growth mindset. I had to do phase one and phase two before I got into
No,
that
no, I
phase
agree.
three.
And Jeff has this statement of what's the art of the possible look like, and then you can ask, are you interested? And I would kind of add to that, like, what would you do if anything were possible, right? And then you start layering, like you said,
Mhm.
reality. And reality is, hey, I want this, but I do know that I have never seen a Latino woman in this role before. I'm going to be
Mhm.
vulnerable and find folks who have been in the role and figure out a way to connect with them and see what I need to have objectively to be prepared. Right. And so you're right. Look, there's a vulnerability that we have to have as minority professionals because the
Right.
reality is there's a lot of glass ceilings to be broken. There's a lot of barriers to be overcome that have nothing to do with just are you qualified and are you good at the job?
Right.
And
Right.
those are a part of the let's call it the focus on being prepared. If you're not being clear to yourself that these are things I have to overcome, like I've said this in other things, but I'll say this for this audience. I'm a big black dude, right? I'm 6'1". I'd like to think I'm about 250, but I'm probably a little more than that, right?
No, Andrew works me at the 250, right,
You know what I'm
Andrew?
saying? And the thing is, when I don't smile, I think like from a resting face, I can look real serious, you know? But I've learned
Mhm.
that that's the case. So I smile a lot. I like to smile. I am a happy person, but I am intentional about it because I want people to be at ease and comfortable. That's me saying, look, I need people to like to want to work with me, to be around me, and that will allow me to be more
Right.
successful. Now that goes into Raquel's point about EQ. EQ is so important. To me,
Right.
EQ is more important than IQ. The leaders I've been around who inspire and make me want to like do everything to help them be
Right.
successful, they have strong EQ. They care about their team and their lives. And because of that, there are people who are like, I'm gonna work late. I'm gonna do what I need to do. I'll come in on my day off because you're gonna hold me down. You're gonna reward me. You're gonna recognize what I do. So one, we all should be able to be vulnerable and talk to ourselves and say, look, I'm lacking here. And it doesn't mean you're not worthy. It just means I need help.
I gotta put in the work. I gotta that bat signal. Where are my folks? I need a safety net, folks. I need you to come around me and I need that support. I need people to be real with me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And one
Absolutely.
other thing, just to kind of like go on your point, it's look, I'm not telling you to be preparing for success with delusion, right? So don't be like, hey, I know I'm going to be successful, so let me go buy this Bugatti. I woke up in a new Bugatti because I know I'm going to be successful. Or
Yeah, we don't want to hear about it later. Don't send us the, the
yeah. I mean,
invoice.
this is about practical things that you can control to prepare yourself for the opportunity that will come across, right? And being aware of the things that you're lacking, being aware of the things that you may be perceived to be lacking, right? This is the whole
Right.
systemic and other barriers. Like, hey, they might not look at me as the type of person who should be in this job because they've never seen this person in this job. How do I overcome that? How do I raise my hand and say, can I help with maybe 60% of these job functions to take this weight off of your shoulders, leader? So now I've been doing this for a year and doing 60% of that leader's job. So people are like, oh, you can do this because you've already done it. Look, I'm not telling everyone sign up for more work, but this is all about how do you think about ways to prepare yourself for that opportunity that you can control. And you can control the work you put in. You can control being self-aware and the things that you're lacking or perceived to be lacking. And put in the work to say those are not accurate. Those are not correct. The Bugatti is not good. The multi-million-dollar home when you can't make it, those are not good. But putting in the work to better yourself, be a lifelong learner, be always vulnerable and humble and looking for support and building your network and looking for mentors and to mentor others, by the way, to give back, all these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm a big believer of remain humble, but stay hungry.
Yes.
you know,
Woo! Yep.
like keep it humble, but stay hungry. Like I have developed a serious appetite over the last, couple of years because again, it wasn't until I rediscovered who Adriana was and is. Like I was still living and manifesting other stuff, and you pointed to some amazing leaders in your career. I had some of those, but I also had some that had very low EQ, and those caused some serious damage, and I brought some of that with me, and it wasn't until I refreshed my frame, I allowed and gave myself permission to be great. I reintroduced myself to the world in the way that I'm supposed to honor my gifts and my strengths. And it wasn't until I started honoring my cultural fluency, where I recognize that my cultural fluency and my professional swag and my perspective on flavorful consumers and new markets that had gone untapped, I am that market base. I am that consumer. And so rather than be afraid of someone saying, oh, there she goes again, I leaned into that and I'm like, you're going to get it today because, while you may be an expert here, let me tell you what my lived experience and my expertise comes from and how I'm going to leverage this as a business driver to support and drive revenue. But again, I was able to do that once I started losing the fear of not being liked, worrying about what people would say because I had a much bigger and greater calling, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's what I have to say about that, folks, where stay humble, but stay hungry.
100%. 100%. I'm starving. I'm starving at all times.
No, that,
but
the,
but
that I mean, sorry, Collin. No, I think the one last piece that I want to add, because I also think it's important while we put in the work as individuals, there's a role to play for organizations and for our HR leaders, right? Where, I think these conversations are also important for folks who are in the business of people and people leadership, where sometimes great talent might be more introverted. Great talent might come from a scarcity mindset and might not be as inclined to raise their hand or, just seem really excited because, again, they're of the belief that if they keep their head down and do good work, that they're going to be tapped on the shoulder. So they might not exude that confidence and that excitement. So, I put a call to action out to my friends and members of my network that are in that HR field. Like, just keep an eye out for those folks because it needs to be inclusive leadership. if we are committed to supporting flavorful professionals, emerging talent, remember, not everyone comes from or approaches career through the lens of a level playing field. You
Yeah.
have to be mindful of some of the other stuff that we navigate. And so, what do those onboarding strategies look like? How are you really diversifying or adding some cultural nuance and flavor to professional development opportunities? How are your career coaches stepping in with a similar lived experience that can connect with an impacted, individual stepping into new leadership or career opportunities? So while we need to do the work as individuals, there's a really important role for organizations and our HR leaders to play as well.
No, I agree, and I think a lot of times, leaders will say, um, "Oh, I can't tell you your career roadmap. I can't do the work for you," and that's accurate. But what you can do is encourage. What you can
Mhm.
do is reinforce, and you can be, instead of being a barrier, be an advocate. And so, when you see someone doing something ambitious, don't say, "Well, no one's ever done that." Say, here's the things that I know you're going to have to do, and the rest you're going to have to create it. There's white space there. No one's done this before, so
Right.
you're going to have to figure it out. And I'll help, but I don't even know the answer, right? Instead of the negative of no one's ever done this before, I think you need to set realistic expectations, right? Give that encouragement. I'd end with this for me. Today I had a conversation with one of my mentees, and she had reached out to another mentee who is doing pretty good. And I said, "Hey, talk to that person. They're already in the field that you're interested in." That person hasn't responded back yet. Now, I'm not going to kill him. I don't know
Mm.
what's going on in his life. He could be crazy busy, this and that. But what I would say is this. When he came, I was there because for me, if I can help, I'm going to help. But I would say, I always say
Right.
this to folks, you should help others. If you've been helped, you understand the power of it, pass it on. And in particular, they're both professionals of color. And she just wanted to understand how does it work in this industry, right? So again, help each other, be there for each other, encourage each other. When you see fair and you see talent, tell them to let the talent emerge and let the fair be submerged, right? We can do it. We can do it together. It's a community. And I love this conversation. I'm going to go back and read all these comments again because I see some real digging in the crate stuff. And we're going to get in there.
Dione,
Dione,
what's
what's
going
good? What's
on,
good,
Dione?
Dione?
No, I absolutely love, and the idea and the affirmation to continue to lift each other and be good to one another. Goodness is so important. Like just being good, right? And that good energy. I'm trying to do away with the energy vampires and the
Oh,
culture
yeah, yeah.
vultures and and that's why we created this safe space, Collin, because these conversations are real. I don't know how many, folks in more of the professional, settings are really unpacking some of these topics. And it's important for us to continue to be real. And we have a real appreciation for all of the folks that keep tuning in. You will definitely want to tune in to our next episode because, boy, do we have some goodness for you.
Yes.
Right, Collin? Like they'll all want tell a friend to tell a
Listen, tell
friend
a
to
friend
tell
to
a
tell a
friend.
friend. We're going to bring another senior person who's been through it and is going to bring flavor to the conversation. And, we're going to keep pushing it. We love being able to share our hearts and our stories with you guys. And I hope you pass it on so that more folks can join in the community.
Absolutely. So, with that, folks, have a great weekend. Stay safe, but stay
Yeah.
close. And stay tuned for the next episode of Keeping It 100. Thanks again, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining, friends. And don't forget to like, share, and hit that notification. See you next time on Keeping It 100.